Beep, 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 beep. Live from Wellston, Georgia, it's another episode of the Wartown Times. Be sure to stay up to date by joining the Wartown Times Facebook group under Facebook.
4. Briefly applying all this common sense. It would benefit the people of our community to begin adjusting their vocabulary for change to begin to occur. After all, that is what this Friendly Neighborhood Manifesto is about, bringing about positive change in Wartown, lest we forget in the midst of this simple and extremely beneficial information we are receiving. Why we say that is because, again, it is not necessary for the state, country, or world to change for the better ahead of us. It is possible to bring the change here to Wartown as an example to other communities. And, truth be told, the endeavor really isn't all that difficult. In fact, it's easy. And the easiest steps is the first, which happens to be using words the right way. Not all of them, what would be the fun of that? No, just a few words such as crime and criminal, law and statute. You see, what we have collectively as a community been conditioned to do is infer that an individual who has violated a statute, act, or ordinance is a criminal who has committed a crime. However, now we are fully informed and know that is not true. These are not the proper usages of these words at all. With this old yet new information, it would be appropriate to run through a few scenarios and properly ascertain the reality of certain situations. Question: have you committed a crime if you jaywalked? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Question: have you committed a crime if you're not wearing your seatbelt in an automobile? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Question: have you committed a crime if you're operating an automobile with broken signals or other mechanical defaults? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Question: have you committed a crime if you choose to put substances into your body not ordained by the state legislature? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Question: have you committed a crime by possessing substances not ordained by the state legislature? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Question: have you committed a crime by cultivating substances not ordained by the state legislature? Answer: no. No one else has had their rights or property infringed upon. Clearly, in just a few brief questions, we can come to an even simpler understanding of how law actually works by repeating in our minds, if there is no victim, there is no crime. As this mantra certainly cuts through any confusion as to what the law actually is, despite what a member of the Bar Association may have you believe. Now, are there statutes, acts, and ordinances pertaining to the above scenarios an individual can violate? Yes, of course there are. Tons of them, like oodles of them. Yet, we must remember that statutes, acts, and ordinances only have the force of law by mutual consent. One party claiming the statute, act, or ordinance has been violated and is enforceable as law, and another party who must consent to it having the force of law. This consent can be and is often given by ignorance and without full disclosure of these things. Basically, you are fooled into giving these things the force of law by not knowing that you haven't broken any law at all. Now, think of every citation you've ever turned money over to the state for, or how many times you were kidnapped to a cage where no one was hurt and no property was stolen or damaged. Then appropriately become angry. And what about all the fines and fees that are imposed upon the good people of Wartown for violations of statutes, acts, and ordinances, many of which surround the concept of licensing, which is an interesting topic to also reevaluate given this new information we're discussing. To keep the topic of licensing very simple, take a moment to think about James Bond's 007, who we all know has a license to kill. Now, why exactly is it that James Bond would need a license to kill? Well, the obvious answer is that 007 would need a license to kill because it is illegal, immoral, and unrestrained to kill, as that is clearly the violation of another person's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Going with this line of reasoning, a license is permission to do a thing which is otherwise unlawful, immoral, and restrained. Which makes sense because the word license comes from the word licentious. Licentious. 1. Characterized by a license, unrestrained by law or morality, lawless, immoral, as a licentious press or stage, licentious wickedness. 2. Lewd, lascivious, offending against chastity as a licentious man, licentious behavior. 3. Unrestrained by strict rules of correctness as a licentious manner of writing, of painting. Synonyms: uncontrolled, unrestrained, unruly, lax, loose, dissolute, profligate, lewd, abandoned. That's Webster's New International Dictionary, 2nd edition, unabridged. Now, with the correct understanding of what exactly a license is, permission to do something unlawful, filthy, and lewd, we should ask ourselves what we are forced to get them for and why. The best way to apply our newly accumulated knowledge is to again ask ourselves some very fundamental questions. Question: do you require a license or permit to engage in holy matrimony? Answer: no. Engaging in holy matrimony is a previously secured right that does not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Question: do you require a license or permit to own or carry firearms? Answer: no. Owning and carrying firearms is a previously secured right that does not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Question: do you require a license or a permit to operate a motor vehicle to travel freely and unencumbered? Answer: no. Traveling freely and unencumbered is a previously secured right that does not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Question: do you require a license or a permit to build on or modify your property? Answer: no. Building on or modifying your property is a previously secured right that does not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Question: do you require a license or permit to hunt, fish, or forage for food? Answer: no. Hunting, fishing, and foraging for food is a previously secured right that does not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Question: do you require a license or permit to partake of plant-based medicines or spiritual sacraments, such as cannabis, psilocybin, or other mind spiritually expanding substances? Answer: no. Your right to life and expression of worship are previously secured rights that do not require permission by the state, per Marbury v. Madison, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama. Obviously, these are just a few simple questions one should ask themselves regarding what Americans can and cannot do without license or permission from the state, but is in no way where a thinking person should stop. A thinking person would be aggressive in favor of interpreting their previously secured rights towards anything and everything that can be pulled from life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Supreme Court agrees. Essentially, what assimilating this information allows you, the good people of Wartown, to do is realign your perspective back to the appropriate one of we the people being free, in a town that is free, in a country that is free. Free people do not need permission from anyone or anything to go about their lives, yet here in Wartown we live in a state of cognitive dissonance each time that we do. It is critical to understand that these statutes, acts, codes, and ordinances, licenses, permits, and fines derived thereof do not have to be struck down or litigated over. No court must hear individual instances of a statute, act, code, or ordinance infringing upon our rights for it to be unlawful. It is unlawful by default if it infringes upon our rights. This leaves we the people free to engage with our rights with impunity. To apply the common sense of all this to our individual lives, we must accept the fact that we are each responsible for knowing these things ourselves, with an attitude of it being common knowledge, because it's supposed to be. The reason many of the problems persist in Wartown, as well as towns across the country, is because of an absence of this knowledge and expectation for others to know it. Clearly, sharing this knowledge with family and friends is a great idea to reignite the brush fires of liberty in the minds of the community, but let us never be timid in the owning of our own rights first, to set the example to others. It is one thing to pledge allegiance to a flag and for the republic in which it stands at football games or other community events, but it is a completely different thing to be a walking ensemble of that pledge every day within the community.
Beep, 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 beep. Live from Wellston, Georgia, it's another episode of the Wartown Times. Be sure to stay up to date by joining the Wartown Times Facebook group on the Facebook.